Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Stuart Sanderson, President of the Colorado Mining Association.
Good morning, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the annual membership meeting of the Society for Mining, Metallurgy, and Exploration, and the 117th National Western Mining Conference of the Colorado Mining Association. Mining, navigating the global waters is the theme of this year's conference, and it is really apt given all of the changing commodity prices, fluctuations, changes and trends impacting our industry. This morning, I wanted, however, to talk a little bit about my organization. I've had the privilege of being the president of the Colorado Mining Association for the last 20 years, and just to avoid any branding or name confusion, CMA stands for the Colorado Mining Association, not the Country Music Association. So we were founded in 1876. We have more than 1,000 members, not just in Colorado, but throughout the world, and we're very pleased to continue our 5th collaboration with SME. We have a proud tradition at CMA with the National Western Mining Conference. You know, many of you came by airplane from around the world. Well, back in the day, back in 1957 for our 60th conference, some people would ride in on their pack mules. And we had a great show then, and it's a great tradition that we are continuing. SME and CMA decided in 2007 to combine our skills and expertise, a relationship that is built on trust and experience. I want to thank Dave Carnegie and the staff of CMA and SME for all of their excellent work in bringing this program about. And speaking of these guys, I think John Marsden might even talk about a little safety share for these fellows as well. Mining is Colorado's heritage. Colorado Mining Association gilded and regilded the capital. Anglo Gold Ashanti was principally responsible for, of course, the current Capitol Dome restoration and donated 65 ounces of gold leaf. So we have quite a vibrant industry in the state. Colorado is mining is part of Colorado's heritage. It is also an important part of Colorado's future. We are a leading producer of coal, of gold, and we are the #1 producer of molybdenum in the United States from our Henderson and Climax mines. It accounts for thousands of jobs, billions of revenue, nearly 3% of Colorado's gross domestic product. But we are also a great international mining center, and that is, of course, what brings you here from all around the world. We have the Colorado School of Mines. Denver is an infrastructure of expertise and is home to many, many mining organizations that apply their expertise to your benefit, both here in Colorado, throughout the West, and the world. I just wanted to make a brief note. As you know, there are many sessions at this conference. The CMA sessions will be in rooms 605 and 607. As you know, Colorado's latest cash crop, marijuana, we're going to be talking about the impact on zero tolerance policies and what we as an industry are trying to do to make sure that we have a safe workforce and we provide a safe environment through those zero tolerance policies. We will also talk about mining in Colorado and mine expansions and the role of Denver in the international mining scene. And save the date for 2016 as well. We are looking forward to a great conference in 2016 in March the 21st through the 24th. This concludes my opening remarks. I want to welcome you here. At this point, I would like to introduce the 1998 SME President, Ihor Kunash.
Buenos días, damas y caballeros. Les deseamos una gran bienvenida a nuestros vecinos cercanos y lejanos a la reunión anual de nuestra famosa sociedad minera, metalurgia y de exploración, y también de la Asociación Minera de Colorado. La sociedad cuenta con la más completa fuente de información sobre la tecnología minera en el mundo. Aprovéchenla. Estamos seguros que esta reunión les ofrecerá la oportunidad de conocer nuevas tecnologías, aprender algo de varios proyectos de exploración y tener la oportunidad de encontrar sus antiguos amigos profesionales y seguramente nuevos. De todo modo, sabemos que disfrutarán mucho de esta reunión y les deseamos mucho éxito. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Nous souhaitons une chaude bienvenue à nos voisins proches et lointains à la réunion annuelle de la Société minière métallurgique et d'exploration et de l'Association minière de Colorado. La société est devenue la plus importante source mondiale d'informations minières. Profitez-en. Nous sommes convaincus que cette conférence vous donnera la chance de découvrir de nouvelles techniques minières, métallurgiques et d'apprendre les nouvelles cibles d'exploration, renouer les contacts avec les anciens amis professionnels et d'en faire de nouveaux. Nous savons que vous apprécieriez cette réunion et je vous souhaite beaucoup de succès. Шановні пані і панове, щирий привіт на річному з'їзді Всеамериканського товариства гірництва, металургії і георозвідки і товариства гірничого з Колорадо. Протягом багатьох років товариство стало найбільшим у світі джерелом технічної інформації гірничих робіт. Скористайте цим. Ми знаємо, що ця щорідна нарада дасть вам можливість познайомитися з новими технологіями, з'єднатися з вашими давними і новими друзями і рівно ж запізнати нових друзів. Бажаємо вам великих успіхів. And welcome to the annual meeting of the internationally renowned Society of Mining, Metallurgy and Exploration and the Association Mining of Colorado. Over the years, the Society has become the world's largest source of technical mining information. Take advantage of it. We know that this annual meeting will give you the opportunity to discover new technologies, reconnect with old professional friends, and make new ones. We know that you will enjoy this meeting and wish you a great success. And now it gives me a great pleasure to introduce to you the 1995 President of the Society, John Marston.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2015 SME CMA Keynote session. We're pleased to see so many of you have joined us this year. My name's John Marsden, and I'm pleased to serve as the 2014 SME President. We've planned another great conference for you this year, with more than 6,314 in attendance. Our technical program includes 103 sessions and more than 670 exhibiting companies. I'd like to start this morning by giving you a safety share. Actually, I'm going to give you two safety shares. The first is to talk about if we have an emergency in this building. To your left, out in the audience, to our right, up on the stage, is one emergency exit. You have to pass through two sets of double doors and then go up the staircases and exit either side onto the street. Or if you're exiting to your right, you exit through one set of double doors, and then you go up the staircases and exit through the doorways onto the street. The second safety topic I'd like to mention is texting while driving. I think many people in this room are familiar with the hazard, but it's responsible for 25% of all car accidents in the USA. According to the National Safety Council, Texting while driving causes 1.6 million accidents per year. The Harvard Center for Risk Analysis estimates that 330,000 injuries are caused every year in the United States, and texting while driving is responsible for 11 teen deaths every day. These are staggering statistics, and we have got to stop this practice from occurring. Also, I'd like to just remind you to please turn your cell phones off before we get the main program going if you haven't done that already. Now, please welcome the moderator of our session today, Peter Bryant. Peter is partner at Clario and senior fellow and honorary co-founder of the Kellogg Innovation Network. Peter is an executive business strategist with more than 30 years of experience developing and driving high-growth strategies for companies in the US, Asia Pacific, and Europe. Peter has been involved in the resources sector for 25 years and most recently chaired a transformative effort with Mark Cutifani, the CEO of Anglo American. Please join me in welcoming Peter Bryant.
Thanks, John. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. I was very excited when John invited me to moderate this panel. I want to confess I am not a miner and I'm not a mining engineer. And in fact, I did the sums. I first visited a mine in 1982, which was Mount Isa Mines, which was part of a company called MIM Holdings, and it was to implement financial management systems on behalf of General Electric. Since then, I've been involved with mining companies in a variety of different roles. In the last 13 years, very much with the innovation efforts of the industry, starting with the fairly visionary industry leadership program that Sam Walsh initiated at Rio Tinto Iron Ore back in the early 2000s, through to the initiative that John just mentioned that I've been co-chairing with Mark Cutifani, the CEO of Anglo American. So it's really with a great deal of interest that I see that the program today is kicking off with the topic of mine of the future. I think it's important because I think the industry is, and many pundits believe, is at an important crossroads in its innovation efforts. And the panel that we've assembled today, and please feel for them because they've got to sit up there for about 20 minutes without being introduced, but we will introduce them progressively as they speak. But it's a very diverse group crossing different commodities from hard metals to minerals to aggregates to the suppliers. So we're looking forward to a very energized debate around this topic. The way we're going to run this program today is we're going to have a brief video. And just so you know, this video is a provocation that is there to spark debate and introspection, not to be taken absolutely literally. So after that video, I'll be making a few contextual remarks. Then I'll be introducing each of the panelists who will speak for about 10 to 12 minutes. You'll notice there are index cards that you all sat on when you sat down. Those do have a function, actually, and that is for you to write a question that I'd encourage you to write. There'll be SME folks at either end of the aisles, past them, and because the discussion we're going to have for probably for about an hour with the panel, I really want to encourage it to be based upon questions from the audience. So otherwise we'll have to talk amongst ourselves. So with no further ado, if we could roll the video, please. Thanks.
The world needs mining. Everything in life that is not grown must come from the ground. Our buildings, homes, cars, planes, power, and technology are dependent on raw materials. However, mining is broken. What was always a risky business is now on even shakier ground. Spiraling costs, government intervention, deepening pits, and lower ore grades have let down stakeholders. Not only do communities no longer trust mining, but it is becoming harder than ever to find and start a new mine. And as stakeholder expectations grow, the industry's social license to operate is at risk. The world needs mining to change. In 2012, the Kellogg Innovation Network convened a diverse group of leaders to recognize the problem and find a new approach. For a year and a half, this coalition met to create a new vision for what mining could be. Their approach, the Development Partner Framework, envisioned a mining industry with a new mindset focused on shared purpose, flourishing ecosystems, and competitive companies, communities, and countries. In a world where mining reinvents its approach, everything is different. Imagine the mining industry attracting the best talent, communities seeking to initiate mining projects to achieve prosperity and become diverse economic centers, leaders from the government, NGOs, indigenous and religious organizations working with miners in tandem, stability, security, and a strong civil society reducing risk and improving operations, and a sustainable and flourishing environment. What has been done so far? Here are some activities inspired by the DPF. New thinking, approach, and strategy for multiple players in the industry. New bridges have been formed to organizations that have an interest in mining outcomes but have not been engaged. A day of reflection was held at the Vatican and also at the Church of England. 20-plus faith-based investors and leaders have toured a variety of mines. The shape and direction of the conversation has fundamentally shifted. We encourage leaders of mining companies, communities, and other stakeholders to be partners in reshaping our future. We must work collaboratively to realize our shared purpose. It is time for us to lead, and it is time for us to act. To learn more, visit www.kinglobal.org or email us at mining@kinglobal.org.
Great. So remember a provocation. So I think, yes, we see a world of increasing demand for all the commodities that we produce. What we do is hard work, absolutely. And a world that needs mining and all the resources that we produce. And sometimes I wonder, does the world and society actually recognize its need for resources and mining? And that's another topic altogether. But nevertheless, I think the industry faces some severe structural headwinds that are eroding both its financial performance and its social license to operate. It's the view of many pundits that a new approach to innovation is urgently needed to deliver the kind of transformative solutions that will address the challenges and set the industry on a new course. The video touched on some of those headwinds, but let me just summarise some. In the last 15 years, we've seen operational expenses across all commodities jurisdictions spiral at an average 10 to 15% per year. We've seen productivity decline across aggregates, across country, across commodities at the rate of 10, 12% a year. We've seen lower ore grades and ores that are just getting harder and harder to get at. And they're all conspiring together to really make it difficult from a financial performance perspective. Routinely, 20 to 40% overruns in CapEx are the norm now, which drives investors crazy. We see now $25 to $30 billion worth of projects that are on hold due to community activism. In the last 5 years, there have been $50 billion of appropriations due to government activism and increased nationalism. We see more and more stranded assets that are uneconomic to mine because of current mining methods. And we see an underinvestment in innovation. The industry invests, by most studies, somewhere between 1/4 to 1/2 of 1% on R&D/innovation, if you use R&D as a proxy for innovation, compared to industrial companies 1.5% to 2%, oil and gas 5%, and aerospace 8 to 10%. So is it that bad? So, in 2015, many mining companies are really struggling to make the returns that their investors are looking for. But if you look at the history of prices, another picture should really be emerging. I know as an industry we like to think about how far the prices have come off their highs, but I took a look at how far the prices have come off their lows of the year 2000, which was a mere 15 years ago. And the numbers are quite surprising because we don't pay much attention to them. Iron ore was $30 a tonne in the year 2000, and today it's $63. Met coal was $40 a tonne, today it's $113 a tonne. Thermal coal, $25, today it's $62. And gold was $280 an ounce compared to $1,264 an ounce. So we are our prices are way higher than they were 15 years ago, yet we're in the same situation in terms of making returns. So the questions this poses, is this a large-scale destruction of value in the last 15 years? Have we, to a large degree, squandered, particularly from an investor perspective, the super cycle and the profits? And do we find ourselves with a significant innovation deficit that seriously needs to be overcome? So John Thompson, a good friend and president of the Canadian Mining Innovation Council and former technology executive at Teck, says that today's innovation is focused more on automating what we do today. but not fundamentally changing the process of mining itself. And he believes the greatest innovation is when we do actually change the process of mining itself to reach new, if you like, baselines for pricing, environmental and safety. Ernst & Young in a report contends the industry has lost its ability to innovate, or that ability has declined. And finally, Tony O'Neill, who's the Group Director of Innovation and Sustainability and Technology at Anglo American, said, "It's clear to me that sharpening our innovation edge is no longer optional. It is a must for the industry." So certainly my conversations with a variety of mining CEOs suggests that the whole topic of transformative innovation is top of mind and top of their agenda these days. We're seeing, Rio obviously is continuing with its Mine of the Future initiative. We see Anglo American and BHP about to embark on similar grand initiatives that are very well funded. The big question is, are the other CEOs, will they have the wherewithal to invest the kind of funds and budgets required in these more difficult financial times? So big questions. So we have a stellar group, as I said, on this panel to kind of explore and discuss these topics. And we certainly want to have a panel that is not 100% agreeable, and I think we have assembled a variety and diverse set of views, and hopefully you'll shake it up with some of your questions. So again, another reminder to fill those index cards out that you're probably still sitting on. So what I'd like to do now is introduce our first speaker, Dean Gehring. Dean was appointed President and CEO of Rio Tinto Minerals, based here in Denver, in October 2014. Dean joined Rio Tinto Copper in Salt Lake in 2003. He's held roles with BHP, Freeport and Rio Tinto, and has lived in the Western US, Canada, Mongolia and Indonesia in various engineering, project management and operational management positions. Please join me in welcoming Dean to the podium.
Thank you, Peter. No, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. And I was thinking this morning that I've been a member of SME for probably close to 25 years, and I've attended various sessions like this early in my career. And I always remember two things struck me. The first one was I would look up on the stage and say, wow, those guys are wise. And then the other thing that struck me is, and they're old. And I can tell you, being up here, I don't feel either one of those things. So for those of you that are early in your careers and just starting out, enjoy the ride. It goes fast. So I hope you enjoyed the video that we just watched. I hope you did find it a bit provocative. And I think that's an important part of maintaining the dialogue and having a really rich discussion today. Also, I just want to put a little bit of a caveat out there. I just got back from traveling in Asia for 2 weeks. And again, two things struck me about this visit. The first one being that the importance of staying close to our customers. In the mineral business, we sell directly to customers, and it's important to stay in touch with them and really have a really strong stakeholder engagement. And the second thing is the impact of jet lag. So right now, I feel like it's about 1 in the morning. And so if I start to ramble on a bit too long or I make some mistakes, I hope you'll give me a bit of a pass and just chalk it up to jet lag. And you can still say, man, he's wise. So in my brief presentation today, I'm going to talk briefly about the minerals industry, but I'm mainly going to talk about technology. And to try to continue the theme of being a bit provocative, I'm not going to talk just about what technology has done for us, but what I anticipate technology will do for us in the future. And it may be different from how you thought about it. So there it is. See, being the first one up here, I get to work out some of the bugs. Okay, so for my presentation. So many of you know that Rio Tinto Minerals started out, or U.S. Borax at that time, started out over 100 years ago in Death Valley. And mining has a very rich history, and I think we all are very proud of that fact, and I know I certainly am. And I feel very honored to play my small part in the lineage of U.S. Borax and now Rio Tinto Minerals. And the picture you see up on the screen that's behind me is a picture of the Harmony Works. So this was the first plant that produced borax for U.S. Borax. And the supply chain that necessitated the iconic 20 mule team. So that's the picture that you see there. Now, the mules were replaced in the late 1800s by trains, but U.S. Borax continued to operate in Death Valley until about 1927, at which time it transitioned to the operation where it is now in Mojave. Now, during that time, technology made a lot of advances, obviously, in the last 100 years, and we'll touch on some of that. And I know the other speakers will also be talking about that as well today. So last year, we spent $150 million, and we built a new dissolving plant. Now, this plant has essentially, or performs essentially the same function that the Death Valley plant did 100 years ago. It dissolves borates. It doesn't sound very exciting. It's like, say, well, what's really changed in 100 years if the process hasn't changed much? Well, obviously, there's been a huge increase in throughput and productivity. But I think the main thing that's been the paradigm shift for us in the industry is the use of process control and how we have this electronic data and what we can do with that. Now, we have gone beyond just fixed plants. And now we actually have practical examples of autonomous haul trucks. And I know Gwen in her presentation is going to touch on this even further. Now, imagine if you were one of the mule skinners back in the 1800s. You're sitting around the campfire, and you're thinking, what's technology going to bring us? I doubt any of us would have thought, you know what, these ore wagons will someday drive themselves from Death Valley to Mojave. I don't think it would have come up with that. And that actually highlights one of the challenges we have as part of this discussion. I think it's actually quite rare that people can accurately predict the future. But that's going to be part of what our discussion about. And as I think, be provocative with your questions, because that's going to help drive a really rich conversation. Now that we have this electronic data available, we no longer have to have the operator in the same time zone as the plant. In our Brisbane Control Center, we're able to get the real-time plant data. It has less than a second delay from the copper concentrator in Kennecott and our copper concentrator in Mongolia. We could actually run the plants from Brisbane. It's quite amazing when you think about it. And we have a similar thing with autonomous fleets in Western Australia, in the Pilbara region. So one thing that I also find interesting is that from my smartphone, I can actually call up right now the real-time data of that dissolving plant that we built last year. This is cool technology. I like that. I can call that data up and see exactly how the plant's running. You know who doesn't like that? The shift supervisor. I'm sure the shift supervisor would prefer I didn't have access to this information. Why? Well, because I take it out of context. It gives me the opportunity to pass judgment based on one data point. I don't know what's happening on the shift. And like many of you, because I worked my way up through that rank, I don't call the shift supervisor and say, what's going on? Because I know there's context that needs to be provided. But it's not just about capturing data that can be used to control the plant. We also capture data that's used to monitor our environmental operating permits. So this is a graph I could also have on my cell phone. I don't. And the reason is that it's pretty flat and boring. It doesn't really move. Now, there's processes and controls in place if it does move that, we have all the right systems to manage our environmental permits. But you know what? There are people that would be interested in this data. As an example, California requires us to submit our greenhouse gas emissions electronically. So no longer do we do paper reports. In fact, it's called the Electronic Greenhouse Gas Reporting Tool. So every year we fill this out. So think about that for a second. We're capturing the data in real time, and we have a regulatory body that is interested in electronic information. It's really only a matter of time before those two things are connected, and the regulatory bodies are receiving real-time information. Okay, that starts to bring transparency to a different level than maybe what we're accustomed to. One thing to point out as well is that it's not just what the government has access to. It's also what the general public has access to. Now, I think probably all of you will recall the Imperial Metals Mount Poly incident that happened last year. Now, I'm not going to talk specifically about the incident. One of the things I want to highlight, though, is how that was communicated. Sure, all the normal media channels were on that, but you may not know that Imperial Metals averaged about 1 hit on their website per day. Within hours of this happening, they had over 10,000 hits on their website. So as soon as something interesting happens, that's when people get interested. And if they don't have all the context, they're going to start to put their own story around what happened. just like how I could do it with looking at how the plant's running. We're seeing increasingly where regulatory agencies are requiring industry to do continuous emissions monitoring. And we're also seeing more examples of where regulatory bodies want to take and have more readily available access to that information. And I believe it's going to change the landscape of how we are regulated going forward. Now, the mining industry hasn't always shied away from transparency. I mean, just as an example, the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative was started in 2002. And this was an initiative that brought governments, communities, mining companies together to talk about what can we do to increase our transparency as it relates to financial initiatives. Now, I'm not saying that EITI is the be-all and end-all of transparency. It's just one example of where we as an industry have been willing to embrace transparency, and we recognize the value of being more transparent. I also believe that companies that recognize that are going to see a competitive advantage in the future, but I think it's something that we need to look at as an industry, not just as individual organization. In Thomas Friedman's book, The World is Flat, he talked about how modern communication allows people to have line-of-sight access to things happening around the world. Now, social media is just one example. It's just one tool that allows people to have that line-of-sight access. And that's what actually brings about this flattening world that Friedman described. Now, I'm not saying that to prepare for this transparency shift that I believe is going to occur, that we need to become social media experts. Social media is already there. People are already connected. The thing I want to point out is that now it's just a matter of people being connected to our real-time data. That's the part that hasn't necessarily happened yet. So, what should we do? Well, I don't think that transparency is a threat. I think transparency will only be a threat to people that choose to ignore it. So if you choose not to ignore it, I actually think it can be a benefit to our business. And there's three things that I think we need to do. Again, this is my view, and maybe we'll have some good provocative discussion with the panel afterwards. First thing is engage stakeholders. Just like I mentioned earlier in my presentation when I was meeting with the customers. But it's more than that. Our stakeholders aren't just our neighbors, because our neighbors are connected. And we have to recognize that. We need to build trust. As an industry, we're really good about building trust in two cases. When we want to start a new project, and if something goes wrong. That's when we put all kinds of effort into building trust. I believe in the future, in the not too distant future, as this transparency shift occurs, we're going to have to build trust at a continual basis. And finally, provide context. If we build strong relationships, our stakeholders will allow us the opportunity to provide context. So when they receive the information, they actually know what it means. Because if we don't provide that context, what we're going to find is people are going to draw their own stories and their own conclusions. This isn't just about controlling the narrative. To me, it's about providing context and making sure we have nothing to hide. So I look forward to a good panel discussion, and thank you for being here.
Thanks, Dean. That was an excellent discussion. Next panelist today is Red. Excuse me. Is Red Conga. Red is president of the Americas division at Freeport McMoRan and is responsible for management of the company's North and South America copper mining operations. This includes 7 mining operations in North America and 2 mining operations in South America and associated downstream facilities with more than 13,000 employees and annual copper production of 2.9 billion pounds. It also has environmental and corporate social leadership responsibilities in the US, Chile and Peru. Through his career, Red has been recognised for his leadership in safety and is considered a leader in change management and production efficiency. Please welcome me in welcoming Red.
Good morning. Thank you, Peter. Great to be here in Denver today. Let's talk about the mine of the future. But before we do that, I'd like to point out that in the early 80s, our industry was proclaimed as dead, and Freeport McMoRan persevered and actually thrived after that declaration. And today I'm going to make a case that we're not broken either. And to make that relevant, at least in the copper end of the mining industry, it needs to be built on, are there in fact demand for these products as we go out into the future? If you look out 10 years from now, if there are no expansions or new mines put in place, there's going to be a serious deficit of copper. So I make the case that there's irrefutable demand for these products. And it's a fundamental building block of industrial society. Copper is a key component of economic development and ever-increasing standards of living throughout the world. The mine of the future will be founded on the principles of safe production. At Freeport in the Americas division, we set out 10 years ago to create the copper mines of the future. And we're very proud of our progress in that. This is our trend in reportable injury rate and severity on the vertical bars. The red line is our fatality injury rate. We're particularly proud of the work that we've done and continue to do every day on the specifics of fatality prevention. I make the case that this is a solid foundation upon which to build the mines of the future, which will be thriving decades to come. The mine of the future will be capital efficient. What I'm illustrating here is that, again, 10 years ago, we embarked on an effort to literally shatter the paradigms of equipment replacement schedules. We no longer replace equipment. We rebuild it. And working with our partners, Joy Global, Caterpillar, and Atlas Copco, to name the top three, we've been very successful doing this. And if you compare the all-in costs between the capital investments that we would have made to replace these machines, we've saved $600 million in capital investment over the last 10 years. The trucks have never run better, or the shovels or the drills. This is just a diagram of one of our many projects that take data, real-time data from our haulage trucks in this case, and allow us to manage the real-time maintenance needs of the equipment, as well as real-time operator feedback on operating the machines for optimum productivity and machine health. We come to learn in the last couple of years that's now called big data. We just call it hard work. We've been doing this stuff. We embarked on this 5 or 6 years ago, and it's all about fundamentals and taking what we have today and making more with less. So here's some additional trend on that. What you see on the left is our fleet of haulage truck availability over time. I know the numbers are small, but this goes back to 2010. We're now up to 90% availability. This is, again, on trucks that have been rebuilt, not purchased new. It's a fleet of 360 units, so I would tell you that it is, in fact, a reasonable data set and not an anomaly. So that kind of improvement over that period of time is the equivalent for us of having 22 free haulage trucks. We have that much more capacity now with that higher availability than we would have otherwise. There's also a misnomer that we've shattered, that to get those higher availability rates, you increase your cost, that you have to pay more for that availability. Not true. The chart on the right shows the cost per hour of those same units, and cost goes down, not up. They're running. You're not working on them. So one of the other things that we look at when when we're assessing our future, what do we need to be in the future, where do we fit on the cost supply curve. We know we're in a cyclical industry, and when demand declines, as we've seen over time, your position on the supply cost curve is very important. So again, 10 years ago, we set out to make major improvements in that. Again, best practices, we run homogeneous equipment fleets. At our mines, you can have any haul truck you want as long as it's a Caterpillar 793. That in P&H the same way. We had to do that because of the low-grade nature of our ore bodies. So if you look at our position here on the curve in 2008 and contrast it with where we were 2013 as the most recent data that we had from Wood Mackenzie, you can see the significant change that we've made in our position on the cost curve. Again, we've been working on the fundamentals of productivity, the things that matter in the mines, haulage, slope stability, slope management, processing improvements and recovery, all combine to make these kind of changes. We also point out that the mines of the future are going to be growing and increasing in output to feed that ever-increasing demand. If I were to draw this same chart for you next year in 2016, the Freeport McMoRan bar is going to be 30% wider than that bar there due to ongoing expansions we've just completed at Morenci. We're completing another one in Cerro Verde in Peru this year. So we intend to continue to grow. We've got a stated objective to do that, so we're very much vested in the mines of the future, and we'll be continuing to do that over the decades to come. One point on energy efficiency and the work we're doing there. This is a brief discussion of high-pressure grinding roll circuits that we're using now in our copper concentrators. We have those both at Cerro Verde, and now this new circuit at Morenci utilizes this technology. We're putting 71,000 tons a day through this one machine. Our analysis of this, our interpretation of the data tells us that this circuit is now 46% more energy efficient than a contemporary or a SAG mill circuit that you would see at a lot of our traditional milling operations. So here's the really important stuff. That's all the fun mining engineering stuff. But the mine of the future works constantly with our neighbors and our regional authorities to ensure that all affected actually realize benefits from the existence of the mine, the expansions, all the things that are done there. We work very hard to ameliorate those impacts, and our key drivers when we're working with these communities and governments are, what can we do to enhance education? What can we do to enhance health in these areas where we live and work? And it doesn't matter what country we're in. We're doing it around the world. I show a few pictures here of things that we do in North America and in our operations in South America. And it's just a fact that the mine of the future will be supported by communities in the permitting and expansion processes that we need to undertake. And to follow on a point that Dean made, if you're only working with communities when you're in trouble or you need something, you're not going to make much progress. We do it every day. We do it constantly. We listen. It's hard work. We make mistakes. We fix them. We have successes. We build on those. And something that we're very, very proud of, and we continue to get better at as the days go on. So in conclusion, I would put to you that the mines of the future are made, not found. The mine of the future is not some elusive fantasy. They are alive and thriving at Freeport today, with many more to come in the future. They are not made in Denver or in metropolitan areas, but on the ground where the mineral occurs, with the people in those areas. They are made through sincere relationships and hard work toward true advancement and benefit for all concerned. Thank you.
Thanks, Red. That was excellent. So our next panelist is Brian Garley. Brian is Group Executive and Chief Marketing Officer with executive responsibility for Peabody Energy's Global Marketing and Trading Group. He has oversight of sales, marketing, logistics, and trading and brokerage activities across the global enterprise. Brian previously served as Group Exec of Sales and Marketing in Australia, where he managed sales and marketing for Peabody's Australian met and thermal coal products. He has held significant mining, engineering, operations and marketing positions at a number of companies throughout a career spanning more than 3 decades. Please welcome Brian to the podium.
Thank you. The clicker. Oh, got it. All right. Thank you. And good morning, and thank you, Peter. It's great to be here in Denver this morning, even though we've got a little snow coming down. I made the comment, I'm glad this is being held in Denver and not up in Beaver Creek, or we wouldn't have anybody in attendance. But I'm here today to talk about the 21st century coal, sustainable mining, energy access, and clean coal solutions. Peabody advocates 3 key approaches that are essential to 21st century coal. First, responsible mining that uses best practices to continually improve productivity and resource recovery that puts environmental stewardship and safety at the forefront. Next, focus efforts to eliminate global energy poverty and to ensure that all people have access to reliable, low-cost energy. And third, the continued advancement of the vision of near zero emissions through the use of clean coal technologies. 21st century coal begins with sustainable mining, and I'd like to highlight a few key components. 21st century coal mining operations demand an intense operational focus. Everything matters, from environmental standards to workforce training, and Peabody believes in forging the best-in-class mining practices. Safety is core. I think you'll hear that common theme from most all of us, but it is truly a way of life at Peabody and is supported by extensive communications and training and risk management programs. We also continually to work on productivity and resource recovery through enhanced mining and extraction methods. And probably the most important thing is we work really hard to support the communities that we're active in. Advanced mining technology is the backbone of modern coal mines. We employ a lot of automated systems, like you've heard from both Dean and Red, from GPS, real-time monitoring systems, computer dispatch systems, thermographic cameras to monitor the health and equipment that we operate, and proximity detection to really assist in high congestion and low visibility areas. We also are employing state-of-the-art equipment that today, as Dean showed, has significant size and complexity. We operate a large fleet of 400-ton trucks, both in the United States and Australia, along with large shovels, drag lines, and underground mining equipments. Last year, Peabody's North Antelope Rochelle mine in Wyoming was the largest and most productive coal mine in the world. We produced more than 118 million tons of coal, and that's actually more than the state of West Virginia. The ability to maximize recovery of resources is also important in modern mining. Production both above and below ground is optimized using multiple mining seam methods, and Peabody is proud to say that at their typical open-cut mines, we typically recover approximately 95% of the resource. We operate 27 mines in the U.S. and Australia. So Peabody looks to restore lands and provide lasting benefit to the current and future generations. We commit to leaving the land in a condition that is equal to or better than we found it. That is a core principle, a core value of Peabody. In 2013, Peabody restored almost 3,000 mined acres of land in both North America and Australia, ranging from wildlife habitat, hardwood forest, prime farmland, and wetlands. In a lot of these instances, these lands were more productive now than they were before we disturbed them. Turning to access to low-cost energy. Nearly a decade ago, the UN Millennium Goals called for a rapid halving of extreme global poverty by 2015. Unfortunately, today we still have 3.5 billion people living without proper energy access. Energy is essential to a better, longer life, bringing improvements in health and longevity and economic prosperity. Energy poverty is the world's #1 human and environmental crisis, and we believe coal is key to increasing access to electricity and improving human health and welfare. Coal is abundant, reliable, and low cost, and it fuels nearly 30% of the energy worldwide. It has been the world's fastest growing major fuel for the past decade. And the face of poverty is stark. Nearly 3 billion people today use primitive stoves to burn wood or other biomass to cook and heat their homes, creating unnecessary indoor air pollution. Each hour of rudimentary stove cook exposure is equivalent to inhaling 400 cigarettes. It's no wonder that nearly 4 million people die each year from respiratory illnesses due to harmful indoor air pollution. So let's look at why coal remains the leading source of electricity generation. More than 3,000 coal plants worldwide offer affordable, secure baseload capacity. This is because coal, as I said, is safe to transport, it's energy dense, it's widely available with large geographic diverse reserves that can be found on every major continent. There's no other energy source that can make this statement. Each day, global energy needs are rising, and between 2010 and 2030, as you can see on the graph, global energy demand is expected to increase nearly 40%. The result is that coal demand is expected to grow nearly 50% over the same time period as coal continues to fuel more electricity than any other fuel worldwide. And more nations around the world continue to turn to coal. Since 2010, some 350 gigawatts of new coal-fueled generation has been added. Yes, China and India lead this initiative, but build-out spans across 30 countries and on 5 continents, and that's enough capacity to support nearly 850 million people. Now let's look at how the world can deliver more coal more cleanly to help satisfy growing energy needs and achieve our important environmental goals. Around the globe, advanced coal fuels clean, affordable electricity and offers energy access for millions while continuing to provide improved emissions. And continued investment in research and development to advance next-generation technologies will move us towards our ultimate goal of coal-fired power that is nearly free of emissions. The U.S. is proof that today's high-efficiency controls at coal-fueled plants can drive major environmental improvements. Since 1970, coal use for electricity has increased more than 170% as GDP has doubled and key emissions per kilowatt hour have decreased nearly 90%. This decline has been achieved through the use of clean coal and clean coal technologies, which describe today's high-efficiency super and ultra-supercritical plants that reduce key power plant emissions of not only sulfur dioxide, nitrous oxides, but particulates and mercury. The system you see here is used at the Prairie State Energy Campus in Illinois, which achieves an emission rate that is as much as 2/3 lower than the existing fleet in the United States. The world can continue to use far more coal, far more cleanly, and we believe it will take 5 steps, which we call the Peabody Plan. First, we must work to eliminate energy poverty by ensuring that at least half of the new generation is fueled by coal. Second, replace older traditional coal plants with advanced coal technologies. Third, we want to develop at least 100 major carbon capture, utilization, and storage projects around the world within the next 10 years. And fourth, we want to deploy significant coal to gas, coal to chemicals, and coal to liquids projects globally during this next decade as well. And then finally, we want to commercialize the next generation of clean coal technologies to achieve near zero emissions. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Brian. Now I'd like to introduce Barry Hudson, a fellow New Zealander. Barry is Director Aggregates, Northern Europe for HeidelbergCement. Prior to this role, which started in 2012, Barry oversaw HeidelbergCement's aggregates and concrete operations in West Europe, UK, Mediterranean and Africa. Prior to HeidelbergCement, he worked for Lafarge and was also co-founder of Aggregate Research Industries. His experience in aggregates covers all continents. Please welcome Barry to the podium.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning, everybody. Well, it's a real honour to stand here and talk to the mining people about aggregates, because from a couple of conversations last night, it sounds like we don't get a lot of airtime at your conference. So hopefully I can put some light on some of the peculiarities of the aggregate industry compared with the other mining industries, and help provoke some of the debate that we discussed earlier in the panel session. So first of all, I just do a quick advert for the company that I work for. I work for HeidelbergCement Group. Globally, we're #1 in aggregates around the world, #3 in cement, and #3 in ready-mix concrete. Getting closer to home, where I work, which is Northern Europe, we are #1 in cement there, and we're looking to expand significantly into aggregates and concrete. That's up there as a map of Scandinavia. For those who are not familiar with it, Norway is not the capital of Sweden. It's a country on its own. Norway is a very important country for us from an aggregate perspective. We actually export the majority of our aggregates from Norway to UK, continental Europe, and Russia. So I thought I would start by just giving you some insights as to the aggregate industry and maybe how it differs from the other mining industries that are represented here on the panel. So first of all, our global production, so this is product produced, not material moved, is greater than 40 billion tonnes per annum. So that's a lot of rock. So construction aggregates is by far the largest mining sector by volume and by value of product. And one of the big differentiators that we have as a product going to the customer is that 50% of the revenue that we get is based on logistics. And that's logistics outside of the mine. This is logistics to the customer. And I was a bit envious, Peter, when you were talking about the prices for your products that you get. On average, construction aggregates sell for less than 1 cent per pound. So that's a bit of a problem for us. One of the fundamental moves that's happening in the industry is that we're moving from traditional sand and gravel operations to hard rock quarries. The reason for that is sand and gravel reserves are depleting. I read an interesting article the other day where it's saying that the amount of sand and gravel that is naturally produced by the planet every year is only half the amount that is actually extracted every year. So that's obviously not sustainable. In Sweden, one of the countries that I look after for Heidelberg for aggregates, there's lots of legislation coming in banning the use of natural materials, so sand and gravels are becoming very, very difficult to get. And typically, most sites in Sweden, you're not allowed to extract more than 400,000 tonnes of sand per year. So the profile of the aggregate business is changing, and it's changing really quickly, and it's getting more industrialized. And typically, when you look around countries, there's lots of what we call mar and par operations, small type pits and quarries, or sand pits, sorry, that produce anything from 50,000 tonnes to 200,000 tonnes. They're fast becoming a thing of the past. And they're moving more into the hard rock quarries, which means that as an industry, we have to become more industrialized. So that's forcing a lot of change, a lot of innovation, and a lot of needs for different ways of doing things. So we need to have different ways of looking at manufacturing our products. Manufactured sand is a good example. You know, when you have a hard rock quarry, there's not a lot of sand there. And one of the struggles for the industry is to be able to come up with innovative ways of producing materials or sands that actually behave the same as natural sands. And it's a very, very big challenge for us, and there's only a few places around the world that have actually mastered this properly. There's much higher barriers to entry getting into a hard rock quarry than a sand and gravel pit. So that's leading to a bit of consolidation within the industry. But when you look at consolidation, you have to put it in context. We talk about 40 billion tonnes of products sold. We're the largest producer. We don't even represent 1% of that. So it's a very fragmented industry, and consolidation is something that we think will happen. So as we move into hard rock quarries, the skill sets that we require from the workforce are considerably different. And it leads us to a completely different profile of people that are required. And it was interesting having a brief discussion in the panel before we convened this morning, talking about the availability of mining engineers. And I thought it was only the aggregate industry that found it difficult attracting mining engineers, but apparently it's everybody else as well. So yeah, it's a real challenge for us, because as you move into hard rock quarries, they're typically more industrialized and larger, and we need a higher skilled workforce. And one of the things that's a point for hard rock quarries, typically when you have a hard rock quarry, you'll produce about 30% of your product will be low value or waste. So we end up selling that or stockpiling that material at below cost, which is a big issue for us. Similar theme, environment and sustainability, very, very important for us. One of the things that I'm very proud of with HeidelbergCement is we actually run a biodiversity competition globally. And last year attracted 2,000 entrants for different mines around the world. It's a big thing for us. An aggregates company is truly an urban mining company. We're typically around the metropolitan areas because, once again, logistics is such a big part of our costs. We have to be close to the market. And in the US alone, there's 8,000 working aggregate sites. So that's 8,000 opportunities to show that we're a good member of the community and to add something back through good relations and biodiversity, etc. We need to be more efficient with the way that we produce things, and we need to reduce the yield of these waste materials. 30% is just way too high. So there's a lot of companies out there working on how to reduce these materials, because obviously if we can reduce the waste and sell as valuable materials, we cut energy, we cut all the things that are required to make ourselves a good, responsible part of the community. One of the unique things that the aggregate industry has, it's either a threat or an opportunity, no matter which way you look at it, is recycling. We have the opportunity to recycle our products. There's asphalt, concrete, etc. And that's an industry that is really, really expanding. 2007, it represented 2.4% sales of aggregates globally, and 2014, it's up to 3.4%. And we expect that to grow significantly in the coming years. So once again, we've got to get rid of the waste. We're truly a part of the community because basically our mines are in the communities. And again, logistics is a really big part of our business. Once again, we need some operational changes. I don't think we're any different than the other industries. Health and safety is a big, important priority for us. We're just not good enough at health and safety. as an industry, and there's a lot of effort from a lot of the majors to make sure that we improve in that area. We need new operational techniques. When we have these urban mines, obviously when we're doing blasting, etc., the neighbours tend to get a little annoyed. Makes a lot of noise and shakes the ground, and we get continuous complaints and claims for cracked foundations and things like that. So we're moving to looking at technologies where we don't blast anymore. We have explosiveless face extraction. And then another big thing for us is mobile production, or portable plants, movable plants. What we find with the economic cycles that we've had, obviously markets change. And having a fixed plant somewhere isn't a lot of good for us if we're a long way from the market, if the market moves somewhere else, because logistics is such a big component cost of our business. So moving to more larger plants that we can move around to different sites to satisfy different market needs. And then as markets mature, our product needs change. Typically, when we go into a new market in an emerging country or any new city or wherever, the types of products that are required from aggregates are different. We need to have a lot of road-based and a lot of structural fill materials when we enter into a new market, and as things mature, we get into more specialty type aggregates where they need single-size materials for asphalt and high-performance concrete production. That brings a certain set of challenges for us, and every time that we make these specialty products, typically we generate more waste. So getting back to the theme, I won't go too much into this, but data is key. Real-time data and being able to use real-time data is key for us, is just as much as the other mining industries. And operational logistic real-time data, allows us to make decisions that we couldn't make before, and that is absolutely key, because our margins are squeezed just as much as all the other minerals here on the panel. And the question was, where do you see the industry going, or the mines of the future? I think from a personal standpoint, the big stumbling block or the big hurdle that we have in aggregates is that we actually don't characterize our product correctly. We have a thing called a particle size distribution, and that's it. We say, we go from 6 inch to 1 inch or whatever, and that's it. We don't talk about surface energy, we don't talk about particle shape, we don't talk about many things that have influence over the way that product will perform. And we need to be able to take the characteristics of the material that we're mining and really understand it, because if we understand it, maybe it'll allow us to mine lower grade materials and get extraction from pits that we didn't think we could extract from before. So for me, characterization of our actual products will take us a long way to helping us mine more effectively in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Barry, for some good insights into the aggregate industry. So our last panelist today is Gwen Hendricks. Gwen is Vice President of Product Development and Global Technology at Caterpillar. Since joining Caterpillar in 1981, she held numerous engineering positions. In 2012, the Caterpillar Board of Directors named Gwen Vice President of Product Development and Global Technology and the Chief Technology Officer. So if you please join me in welcoming Gwen to the podium.
Good morning. Thanks so much for the opportunity to be here. Mining equipment manufacturers, including Caterpillar, support many aspects of the mining process, whether we are above ground, below ground, offering parts and service support, offering technology and solutions. We are committed to the mining business, and we're committed to the enduring success of our customers. Over the last decade or so, the mining industry has gone through a business cycle like no other in its history. As growth in the emerging markets shifted into high gear, demand for coal, iron ore, copper, and other commodities far outpaced supply, driving prices way up. And this awoke the sleeping giant. In response, mining companies moved quickly to increase production to meet the rapidly growing demand. And in support, the mining equipment companies responded in kind. They deployed significant capital to add capacity and increase production, as well as increasing equipment productivity through the development of larger and faster machines. We reduced emissions as we deployed our Tier 4 compliant products. And as we deployed those Tier 4 compliant products, we increased fuel efficiency at the same time. And most importantly, we responded to enhance operator safety through added features and more sophisticated machine interfaces. While these were all significant accomplishments worth celebrating, they were pretty incremental and not the transformational changes that are needed to realize the mine of the future. A mine that is fully optimized, continuously connected, efficient, safe, autonomous, and sustainable. So as we look to the next decade, we see the opportunity to be transformational in terms of the impact that mining equipment companies can have on the industry as a whole. More specifically, we see transformational improvement opportunities in 3 areas that I'd like to touch on today. First, increasing equipment productivity, reliability, and safety through data analytics. Now, normal adults need to hear a new concept about 7 times in order for it to stick with them in their minds. And I just want to let you know that we've agreed that my job on this panel is to mention data analytics and data, big data, the 6th and 7th times during the course of our discussions today. Big data and data analytics have a huge role to play, and we all see that. Second, we can enhance efficiency across the entire commodity value chain through technology-enabled solutions. And third, we need to enable the sustainability of mining operations. So, here's time number 7 at least. To begin with, the exponential growth in computing power, data storage, and sensor technology has unlocked the door to remote equipment monitoring and control. By placing sensors on mining equipment, Caterpillar provides the operator with real-time data and decision support to improve productivity and safety. In addition, Caterpillar dealers and customers can analyze this data to improve how operators interact with the equipment, how the equipment interacts with other equipment, and how mine planners and operations managers interact with the site. This data is also used as we can leverage it across a fleet of machines so that we can predict component lives, predict impending failures, and plan any needed product support as part of a preventative maintenance cycle, reducing downtime, increasing efficiency and productivity. In the underground space, we've already seen operators controlling equipment remotely to keep themselves out of danger. On the surface, we've seen remote-controlled blast hole drills to optimize the hole pattern for extraction and hauling while keeping the operator safe. And finally, our customers' large mining truck fleets are operating autonomously, which reduces the operating expenses of the mining company while it keeps operators out of harm's way. With this as the foundation, a fully autonomous mine site is definitely within reach. Within the next decade, we fully expect the continued advancement in these areas will pave the way to a fully autonomous mine. This technology-driven systems approach to mining will enable transformational improvements leading to increased productivity all the way across the mine site. Next, we see an opportunity to extend this transformational change across the entire commodity value chain, from exploration to the point of consumption. We'll have drones monitoring the current state of not only the mine site, but the stockpiles before and after processing. The drones will be monitoring the transportation network to identify any disruptions that might impact the operation of the mine. By taking an end-to-end view of the value chain, customers can plan and manage a much more effective mine site and operation. Sources of variability can be identified and managed. Avoiding disruptions within the value chain leads to effective equipment management that increases utilization, takes full advantage of planned downtime, and eliminates costly equipment bottlenecks. This end-to-end view of the commodity value chain provides the foundation for new mines to be planned in a way that enhances productivity across the entire value chain. One of the biggest challenges faced by the mining industry today is sustainability. So how can Caterpillar help to reduce the impact that mining has on the environment? In the next 10 years, we see the opportunity to enhance resource recovery through innovative mining methods that have less of an impact on the environment. For example, in underground hard rock mining, we expect continuous cutting methods to displace traditional drill and blast methods for resource recovery. Continuous mining more precisely targets the resource that's being recovered, reducing the footprint left behind, reducing waste, reducing environmental impact. Next, technological advancements in photometrics, radiometrics, and lasers will enable ore sensing and sorting to remove waste at the source, leading to reduced handling and processing of materials. By preventing waste material from being processed, we can potentially eliminate tailings ponds while improving water recovery and reuse. In turn, this reduces the amount of land needed, making it easier to obtain permits and licenses to operate. In addition to ore sensing, we see the opportunity to continue to make mining more energy efficient. In terms of extraction and hauling, we're going to continue to see advancements in hybrid technologies and alternative, cleaner fuels. We know that processing, grinding, and milling can consume as much as 40% of the energy used across the value chain, a huge opportunity for us to drive efficiency gains. Advancements in more energy-efficient mills and consumables, coupled with advanced mill power control systems, will lead to significant reductions in energy consumption. And finally, semi-autonomous and autonomous mobile equipment will have a significant impact on operator health and safety. By taking the operator out of harm's way, we can eliminate noise-induced hearing loss, respiratory illness, and the risk of acute bodily injury. In all, we see that mining will be recognized as a sustainable industry in the years ahead. It'll significantly reduce its environmental impact through decreased energy usage, improved fuel emissions, lower noise levels, and reduced water and land disruption. From Caterpillar's perspective, we see a bright future for the mining industry, and we fully expect that mining equipment companies and miners will continue to work together as partners, driving innovations to improve productivity and enhance safety while becoming more sustainable. We fully expect that innovations in mining methods will present new challenges and opportunities to partner with mining companies to meet the growing demand for mined commodities. To partner with mining companies, we see that innovations fueled by the next generation of our people, socially aware, environmentally minded, and focused individuals, will be enabled by a rate of change of technological advancements like no other in history. By 2020, it's safe to assume that nearly 5 billion people, or 2/3 of the world's population, will be connected to the internet. That is 5 billion potential innovators that the mining industry not only can but must tap into to solve our most challenging problems. In the meantime, the biggest opportunity that we see over the next decade is to piggyback off of the technological revolution. This exponential growth in computing power, data storage, and sensor technologies provides us with the opportunity to collect and analyze data that can be used to ensure productivity across the entire commodity value chain. And with infinite computing via the cloud, coupled with an explosion in networking and sensors, data can be analyzed to provide real-time decision support from the mine planner to the operations manager to the equipment operator. And given the rate of technological advancement in artificial intelligence and robotics, we may see an unmanned mine in operation within the next decade. Thanks for your attention, and I'm looking forward to some questions and answers.
That's awesome. Thank you. Okay, so we're now entering the discussion portion of the program. So again, I encourage you to take the index cards and write some questions. The harder the question, the better. And if you want to direct your question at a specific panelist, please do so. So just hand them to the end of the aisle. There'll be SME folks there to grab them, and then they'll be feeding them to me on behind. So anyway, I'll start off with some questions for the panel, and hopefully we'll get some questions from the audience. So I guess just pose this question is that, we've been seen in a lot of reports, a lot of commentators, and I mentioned it, we have an innovation deficit as an industry. We under-invest in innovation as an industry. We're not keeping up with expectations of society, etc. So, and we know the structural headwinds, serious, obvious. So as leaders and miners and suppliers, what's your reaction to that, and what do you see as the path forward? Do we need a course correction, or do we just continue on the path that we're on? Especially to achieve this aspiration of the mine of the future, which obviously looks different to different people. We don't have one definition of that. So, Red, maybe you want to kick that one first, and then we'll ask each of the panelists to share their views.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Certainly at Freeport, we're very proud of the innovation that we've done so far. I outlined some of those highlights this morning. And again, they're incremental things. It's not a transformational thing. It's not something that's happened overnight. You read about big data examples. Our example that's netting huge results for us. It's taken 5 or 6 years to develop. So they're not quick. They're not headline, but they're real. They are sustainable, and they continue to improve our position and improve our the competitive nature of our company. So we're going to continue to do that, and if something transformational comes along, we're glad to listen about it. But we're working on fundamentals of productivity and safe production, and we think that's where the mine of the future is headed.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Red. Dean, Rio has probably the most visible mine of the future initiative in the industry. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think the statement that there's a technology deficit is a bit of a broad brush.
Sure.
Because you can find examples in, I think many companies around the world. Rio's one example of where technology is being employed in an innovative way. However, I think one of the challenges we face as an industry is we're trying to be fast followers.
Yeah.
Rarely are we trying to be out on that edge. And I think one of the keys for us to be successful in the fast follower mode is just to get better at collaboration. I mean, even within our own company, I can even look at just our own operations. Sometimes one plant's doing something great, and a kilometer away, the other plant doesn't know that that's happening. Yep. And so I think part of what we need to do is, as new people are coming into the industry, help them to understand that it's not about them coming up with a solution. Sometimes it's about them just finding the solution.
Okay, great. Thank you. Gwen, maybe as a supplier, there's obviously a view.
Yeah, I think where we have been successful in innovation in the past, it's been where we have had very close collaborative relationships, very transparent relationships between the supplier, the customer, and those who are using the equipment. So that's going to continue to be essential. But we do see exponential change happening in technologies that will enable us to do things even faster going forward than we have in the past. The key for us in this industry is we've got to strike the right balance, to Red's point. We've got to strike the right balance of identifying new ideas, assessing risks, mitigating those risks, and making sure that we handle them properly before we unleash them on customers, on operators, on people in society. So
Absolutely.
it's a fine balance.
I think that kind of open collaborative model is very important.
Yeah.
So, Brian, from Peabody's perspective?
Yes, I think I would echo what Dean said. I think in our industry, we've been kind of maybe fast followers. There are some really good examples of innovation and technology. We know about the autonomous trucks, autonomous drilling, remote control dozing. One of the things that we've embarked on here recently is underground top coal caving. There's 2 or 3 installations of that in Australia right now. It's had some mixed results, but I think it's really important, as Gwen said, it's the collaboration, because we're in an environment right now where you can't take the big risk and to employ the technology.
Exactly. I mean, this whole notion of fast follower versus early adopter is a big discussion in many industries. Barry, aggregates, what are you?
Yeah, well, we're in the unique position where, as I said, we have a lot of small mining operations, and that's the industry's moving to larger operations. So we are, in a lot of cases, just becoming to be industrialized. So the innovation is becoming fast and furious. We can piggyback on a lot of things that come from the suppliers, a lot of lessons learned from other mining industries. So for us, definitely are fast followers. But things are changing for us. Chicago, for example, there's a lot of underground aggregate mining going on. Those things perhaps will become more prevalent in different areas. So, I think we're in a situation from a mining standpoint that we have the luxury of being able to be a fast follower as we slowly industrialise the industry.
Thanks, Barry. Thanks, guys. I think my challenge to you would be to think about, Jack Welch was famous for this, as saying that having a muscle that you're great at incremental innovation, which is optimizing what you do today, and transformational innovation, you have to be good and excellent at both today. That's table stakes for any company. And I think, and I'm not sure I see that in the mining industry, but I'll just put that out there. Not a question, just a statement. We've got some great questions from the audience, so this is great. So I'll start off with one, and just show of hand if you want to grab one of these. So improvements are only as good as the people running them. So please discuss the need for developing an engaged and effective workforce to do all the things that we've been talking about. So I won't choose somebody, but somebody want to grab that one? Because the workforce, capable workforce, is very important. So,
sure, I'll take that one.
Dean, thank you.
Yeah, that's something that's actually very close to my heart. And what I think is important is to help the workforce understand that you're trying to solve their problems. If you approach from a standpoint of eliminating defects that make them have a bad day, they're typically very engaged in doing that. It's much more difficult to go to a millwright on the shop floor and say, can you help me increase shareholder value? Not that you can't have that conversation, it's just much more difficult. Whereas if you say, what causes you to have a bad day and how can I help you to fix that, oftentimes that also increases shareholder value.
Okay, great. That's true. Anybody else on workshops? Red, please.
Yeah, we invest a tremendous amount in training and education, but also have supporting systems that truly align the workforce with our objectives. They're simple, they're straightforward, they're built around safety and our production efforts, and everybody very much feels a part of those accomplishments that I showed you this morning, and they're well remunerated for that, and there's a lot of momentum and good morale around all of that.
Okay, great. Cool.
Yeah, in aggregates, I mean, we have a problem globally of very much an aging workforce.
Yeah.
We find it very difficult to attract young talent, and it's one of the single biggest problems that we face. One of the things we do at Heidelberg is 3 years ago we started a thing called the Aggregates Academy, where we look at training various competencies within the business, just in an effort to obviously raise the bar as far as quality of workforce, but just to retain people, because up until the last year or so there's been a lot of competition for our skilled people, especially in countries like Norway, where oil and gas is such a big industry. Trying to get engineers, etc., is has been a big problem for us.
Okay. Maybe another dimension to this is obviously for Gwen and Brian is, I mean, there's this tension between the developed world, developing world. You know, we say a mine that's fully automated. In some countries that'll be like, no way, because they see mines as large employers of people. You know, Africa, Latin America, developing countries. So how do you kind of again reconcile this, you know, fully autonomous mine, lower labour workforces in countries where they see these mines as big employers? Any thoughts around that? So do we end up with two worlds of mining, one that's people intensive and therefore safety issues, and one that's autonomous? I don't know. So Gwen, do you want to?
I think in our applications of autonomy and semi-autonomy, what we've seen is even when there are workers, mine workers on the site, we've been able to make the operation safer. And so that needs to apply no matter where you are in the world. But I don't think it's something that necessarily just happens overnight. No. And so, you know, we start with, on lots of equipment, we start with semi-automation, which are ways of helping the operator be more productive. And that's especially good in places where you have, you know, lower skilled workers who aren't used to doing this kind of thing. So if you can help them be productive, then that's just overall good for the health of the mine, for that country, and for the industry overall.
Okay, great. Brian, do you want to?
Yeah, I guess with us, I think one of the things that's really helped us on educating the workforce is it's the transparency. Yeah. Whereas when I started, which hasn't been that long ago, but you know, it was pretty much a management's responsibility to make sure that the mines were profitable. Sure. And I think all of the companies have had to, because of the declining commodity prices, really seek and reach out to all their employees. Yeah. And we've had some great benefit of that, both in the U.S. and Australia, by making everyone an owner. And so it is trying to educate them that you're working for your owners, whether they're shareholders or privately held companies.
Sure. Yeah, Red?
We take advantage of attrition, and for instance, this expansion we're doing in Peru, both plants, the existing one and the new one, have become more efficient than when we first built the original concentrator there. As we start the new one up, we're going to change the employment levels at both plants to match the new productivities. We've gotten a lot of training benefit out of the personnel that are at the original plant. So, yeah, we end up with a lower per ton treated head count, and do it in a way that, you know, is not. We're still hiring more people. There's more benefit there, but we're taking advantage of the improvements and again educating the workforce along the way.
Yeah, it's a big area. So I'm going to change gears entirely now. So I have a card here that's got asterisks, #1, and exclamation marks on it. So I assume that's to get my attention. The deck card's actually two questions together, so I'll combine them if I can. So the first one is, are mining industry leaders really willing to spend the time and the money that it takes to operate with a new approach toward communities? Then the one that's got exclamation marks, I'll paraphrase this. And a commentary off the video was, is this an unnecessary pandering to placate our social critics, or is it an essential part of a new PR campaign for the mining industry? And I think they're connected, and because all of you talked about a more transparent, open dialogue that's not episodic but continual, you know, particularly with key stakeholders, especially the communities. So I think this is kind of interrelated, and technology has a huge role to play in that, obviously. So are we saying this is just buzzwords placating critics? I don't know if it's a PR campaign, and is the industry willing to invest the time and effort it's going to take and because this kind of activism from communities and Indigenous people is increasing exponentially. So it's a big hairball, I know. So, and we're technology people. Red.
So the answer to the first question is yes, and the answer to the second question is no.
Okay.
We are absolutely committed to working with communities to further our business interests. I mean, it's all driven around our ability to. These are long-lived ore bodies that we're exploiting, to be able to operate in those regions for decades to come. And as I said, we work at it every day and truly try to find things that help people in the areas where we live and work. And it's different in the United States. There are different levels of things that we do here than we do in Peru and Chile. But it's hard work, and it's not just about the money. We've done some. As a matter of fact, I've seen things where you've given large sums of money that are ineffective, whereas things that have much smaller costs but a lot more time investment involved have been much more effective.
Yep.
So it's not a PR campaign. It's about business. The KPI that we want to be judged by is are you able to permit and further your operations there, and are people supporting you to do that? And our track record is very transparent on that.
I think it's important. Dean?
Well, I think another thing, to Red's point, that's changed for us is that, we used to talk about in developing countries how much quicker you could bring a project online. Yes. That's just not true. I mean, it doesn't matter where you're operating in the world. You have to do the hard work, and it takes a certain amount of time to do it right and make it happen. Yeah. So it's not just that, mines could be driven out of North America to developing countries. If you want to develop a mine anywhere in the world, these are things you just have to do.
Exactly. I agree. Anybody else want to throw any?
Yeah, we
refer to Mongolia and places. Yeah.
We refer to it internally. It's just having the license to mine.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really critical in the communities that we work in, and in this new age of information transfer. Yeah. It's not that you're in a remote area or you're in an area that supports mining and they see the economic benefits. But it's most of the time when we have opposition, it's from people that aren't even in our area. And I think Dean mentioned something about customers. It's really, we've got a lot of customers now that are very interested in our sustainability, our mining practices, and what we're doing in our areas.
Great. So one thing I'd like to share is, I had the great honor to be with, the 25 CEOs at the Vatican under Cardinal Turkson, and then with the Archbishop of Canterbury with the same set of CEOs at the at Lambeth Palace in England, which was only 6 months ago. And the reason we had these faith-based, we had the CEO Sam Walsh, Gary Goldberg, Ivan Glassenberg, Patrice Motsepe. I mean, it was kind of who's who. I worked out it was about 60% of the mining revenue in the room. And the reason we're having these faith-based dialogues is because in many communities, the churches are the most trusted institutions. And in fact, the mining industry and the churches never engaged with each other, never talked to each other. And those people had a very, very negative view on mining. And a statement was made that by the Archbishop of Canterbury that said, you cannot show me a community anywhere in the world at any time in history that is better off after mining has left than when mining arrived. And nobody was in a particular challenging mode at that time. And I'm sure you can always find exceptions, but that's the kind of, and the thing is we can disagree with that, but that's how they think, that's how they interact with their communities, and because the communities go to them, what do you think? Should we have this project here? And what I'm pleased about is that, it was I tell you, it was very difficult conversations because people, we're both defending our positions. But at the end, we found common ground. We've taken faith-based leaders to see mines, and those 30 leaders had never been to a mine and never been to the developing world. And they're activist investors as well as faith. And so it's about educating and having a dialogue, collaborating together instead of standing on either side of the fence. So, but very, very important. And I agree, not a PR campaign. Absolutely not a PR campaign. So it's cool. Okay. Any other comments on this one? This is you do urban mining, Barry. I mean, that's like you've got to be.
I mean, we do. As I said, we are true urban miners, and it's a big thing. I think if we're true to ourselves, we created a problem in the past. I mean, just look at the photos of some of the other presentations of the olden day shots. I mean, we probably weren't the best stewards of the environment. So we have a lot of repair work to do, and I think that's probably where the PR concept comes from. But it's from our industry, it's genuine, and it's not just having a restoration plan that's approved by the municipality. We go a lot further, and as I said in my presentation, serious about biodiversity, etc. Every site that we have in Aggregates Northern Europe has a biodiversity plan over and above the restoration plan, and communities really embrace it, and it really helps. I mean, I'm sure getting a permit for aggregates is no easier than a permit for some of your minerals. It takes a long time, a lot of risk. So you have to be not only perceived, you actually do truly need to be a responsible member of the community, and it's important for us.
I'll just pull this thread one more piece, is because I think the big mining companies and those that are in the ICMM, etc., are probably working to a higher standard than a lot of the other companies. So, but you've got a lot of juniors, smaller companies that either don't have the capacity or capability to do some of the things that are being asked by the industry, by society, and even by the standards the industry is setting. And we all know sometimes the industry gets whitewashed with the lowest common denominators. It just takes one bad act from one bad actor and suddenly the whole industry is bad. And that's pretty hard to recover because it affects, you may not get your permits, it delays. Is there a responsibility? How do you make the small companies effective at that, as well as, I mean, as the big companies, do they have a responsibility to make sure the little companies can do what you're trying to do? Or is it just let market forces play out and it is what it is? It's a knotty question, I know.
Well, certainly from a historical perspective, we have done a lot and continue to do a lot with mine land reclamation of abandoned mines. That, that job's going to go on for a long time in the future. So that's part of the ongoing responsibility. But certainly ICMM, I think, is a very appropriate approach of industry standards. Come join, come participate, come work to make the industry as good as we can be.
Sure.
I think those are noble efforts and will continue.
Okay, cool. Let's move on. So back to technology, more comfortable. So do you believe technology and innovation will play the same role in the third world communities as in the first world? And what will this mean to local economies, actually? I mean, they talk about automated trucks versus local truck drivers, but I think it's also about economic transfer. How do we make sure the economic benefit when we're in developing countries actually flows to the communities in first and third worlds? And do we really believe in the third world that this will increase value? So I guess, it's that question. So any comments about this differential between the first and third world? And can we deliver economic value? Gwen?
Yeah, so, I'm just thinking back and, having been around for a while, I remember when before China was becoming, the world force that it is today, and vast parts of the country not covered with telephone access. And we thought, oh, wow, is it going to take years and years for them to put in place all the telephone wires that are needed to reach the same levels of communication that we have? Well, guess what? Skip that step entirely, right?
Yeah.
So how many villagers in India and Africa have cell phones? Okay, I think that in, these developing countries, they're just going to skip steps that we have gone through. They are already rapid adopters of technology, and it's going to help accelerate their move up the economic ladder so that more and more of them can enjoy, middle-class kinds of benefits much faster than they evolved in our economy.
I think it's a key point. I saw a statistic in The Economist that registrations of smartphones will exceed the world population this year, which is a staggering statistic. So it just kind of it's a lens on what you're talking about. Dean, you were nodding away there.
Yeah, one thing I think that we've recognized is that in developing countries, especially if it's a new project, they don't necessarily have a preconceived notion of how it should be.
Yeah.
So they're actually easier to train to new technology, sometimes in very established operations in the U.S.
Okay, cool. Anybody else? Cool. Okay. Dean, I've got a question for you. Actually, and this is for everybody, really. Are you concerned about your competitors seeing your real-time transparent data? So as we make more data transparent, there's competitive issues, and we've got this in the unconventional oil and gas industry too, with certain things, and also not only competitors but legal implications. If you reveal data that actually may be contravening, the tendency might be to I actually don't want to really show that. So
yeah, no, that's a really good question, and I mean in our case. Specifically within the Boreas business, there's two major players. There's us and a mine in Turkey. And there was some recent legislation in California that we successfully lobbied to, against, so we wouldn't be giving away what we consider to be trade secret information.
Okay.
So that's going to be there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we have to be honest about, is it really that, or are we just trying to use that to protect data that really doesn't have any trade secret implications?
Exactly. Yeah. Brian, I'll go to Brian. I mean, you're in a very industry that's attacked a lot. I mean, how do you feel about transparency and of data in that way?
Yeah, I don't think there's some parts of the world that obviously we see it as a threat, and where there's not laws that really prohibit much of that. I guess as information becomes more transparent, I think from the mining standpoint, engineering, there's really been a lot of collaboration and sharing.
That's good.
And, we all have our own unique challenges and reserves and infrastructure issues, but I really don't see it being a huge threat to our companies.
Cool. Brad? Yeah.
No, we don't have anything to hide. I would make the distinction between data and information.
Yeah.
That, we're happy to provide information. I think just raw data, to Dean's point earlier about context,
Very important.
So it needs some context.
Okay, great. Gwen, data up the yazoo out of Caterpillar systems?
I tend to segment it somewhat. There's some data and information that absolutely it needs to be transparently shared, and then trade secret related, or some that gives particular competitive advantage.
Yeah.
I think we should have a right to protect that which is highly valuable to us as well.
Exactly.
So it's finding our way and really understanding the difference between the two.
Okay. Barry?
I really don't have anything more to add. Obviously, if you have sensitive business information, that is to remain confidential. But as an industry, we should be proud of the way that we operate environmentally, health and safety, and why not make it public? If we've got an issue, we should fix it, not hide it.
Okay, great. Somebody did ask, and it's a valid question, I think, but maybe to a couple of years, that obviously as we get more automated, more online, more networked, hacking, obviously, and cyber security becomes a bigger issue for the industry. So any thoughts on that? And Gwen, obviously, as a supplier, that would be a huge issue initially.
Yeah, I think it will be a huge issue, because just as we're concerned about access to our personal information and the damage that can be done if that gets into the wrong hands. As we get more and more online, we've got to have robust ways of making sure that someone who has not so noble intentions can't get access to that and create a problem.
Yeah, it could be a big danger. Anybody thinking about that? Is that a big topic in any of the companies? Cyber security as we become more online, more automated?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So nothing's...
we're all guarding against it
as best we can.
What we know today. So
yeah.
So essentially, an entire industry has started to form around cyber protection to avoid that. And I know, at least in our case, I'm required to change my password so much, and it's so complex, I have to write it down or I forget it anyway. So I challenge anybody to break in, because I have trouble getting into my own computer.
No, exactly. Yeah. No, it is hard. I had one cybersecurity expert tell us one day that there's no point actually trying to protect systems from hacking access. The key is once they're in, the key to technology is finding out you have been hacked at the moment it happens, and to direct them out and notice your system, because it's almost impossible to stop being hacked. So it's kind of interesting. Let's see, where should we go? Declining grades. I think, Caterpillar actually has that. Chris was the one that told me the statistic, Gwen, that a year ago, that in the next 10 years, Caterpillar had estimated that to get to the same amount of mineral resource that we extracted in the last 10 years, we will need to move 2 to 3 times as much waste to get to that resource. And you think about that's energy, it's water, it's equipment. That's just resource. How do we, and Barry, you mentioned this, I think all of you, how do we get to a point, this is my future, we don't have waste, or you really minimize that? Because we're just going to keep, creating a situation where we can't get, and this ties to the cost issue, we're just going to end up driving costs through the roof on resource extraction. The market eventually is going to start paying that, and companies, so how do you create a reasonable cost base, make a reasonable return on capital, and not have this huge energy-intensive, water-intensive process going on? Because it's only going to get worse. So kind of unpick that one. Red, you want to?
Yeah, so with these large, low-grade open-pit mines that we have, the next generation for us is going to be mining steeper pit walls.
Okay.
So the work that we've done to date, we know that there's actually a range of slopes that you can mine at, depending on how well you can dewater the area around the pit. So, for instance, we're working on oil and gas technology with Schlumberger, where we drill a big hole directionally underneath the pit, dewater that way. We have several of those in place at Morenci right now, and
cool.
So if you can make 2 or 3 degrees difference in the pit wall, so you'll eliminate a lot of waste by doing that.
Cool. Dean, Rio, thinking about this?
You know, for most of my career, I've always heard that statement, you know, focus on your core business. Don't be distracted by non-core. But what I've been realizing in the last 5 years is that those non-core opportunities are those things where you start to find value for your waste. It may not be much. And I think that's going to become increasingly part of our core business, is to continue looking at the fringes to see what can we do to turn everything that we touch into value.
Okay. So just eliminate waste by creating value.
Yeah.
That's important. Barry, you talked about 30% waste.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a problem for us. Necessity drives invention. There are lots of technologies that are coming out. I mean, we're slightly different than you guys. We sell inert objects, if you like. Lots of chemical technologies coming out to help us deal with lower grade ores to make them premium or saleable products. Yeah, but, you know, there's one man's trash is another man's treasure as well. I mean, a lot of your overburden would be fantastic construction aggregate as well. So, you know, same with in our cement plants. We take away unsuitable limestone for cement production, where perhaps we should be looking at that as construction aggregate. So I think as the industries mature and you really have to start to look at the entire value chain, opportunities will jump out.
I agree. Okay, great. Brian, from Peabody's perspective?
Yeah, I guess, you know, in a lot of our surface mines, we do a really good job of cleaning the product, and what pretty much comes out of the pit, a high percentage of it, very high percentage, goes to the market. Our underground mines are a challenge. Obviously, in adverse geology, it makes it difficult. One of the things I alluded to is on this underground longwall top coal caving. We were basically, and you talk about kind of not being a good steward of the resource, we have 11-meter seam, and we were only mining about 3.5.
Okay.
And this longwall top coal caving now allows us to basically recover the entire seam. So it's a utilization, better utilization. But we're seeing, I think, in Asia, a lot of plants that are being built to handle lower quality or lower thermal content coals, which allow us to ship more product with a higher percentage of what would have normally been reject. And so there is a consumption, a higher consumption of the resource that we're mining.
Okay, that's great. Gwen, Caterpillar obviously gains the more waste, right? You sell more trucks.
Well, although, you know, as I mentioned, underground in particular, continuous techniques and the technologies that support those, so that we can displace, you know, blasting and then having to haul away a lot of waste material. That's just one example of where technology can be brought to play to help.
Exactly. So I've got another handful of questions. The audience is getting braver, trust me. I've got some curly questions here. Wow. Let me just go through here. Just give me a minute. Okay, let's start with this one, and then there's an apologies question to you, Dean, but I'll keep that for next. So how can we produce an autonomous mine in 10 years when the industry divests its technical laser, I think that says laser, and shelves projects every downturn? It's a good point. I mean, many companies have actually, as many companies are investing in innovation, as many major mining companies have shut down innovation groups, departments, projects, anything that doesn't improve performance this fiscal year. So how can we get to this 10 years if we're just always cutting in downturns and never sustain investment?
Well, we believe that you have to continue to invest in everything, and we do that through the cycles. Again, we showed several examples of that this morning. We're going to build on those foundations and continue to do more of that. So but again, we're not trying to invent a way to transport material out of the mine without a truck. We're not doing that, but we are innovating within, that framework. How do we do that better and better?
Okay. Gwen, you mentioned that you could see that. Do you see this as a risk, I guess, a challenge to making this happen?
Sure it is, and it is, across this industry and in our business as well. And so, the magical combination is if you can figure out a way to do enough continuous improvement so you're getting the short-term benefits that you can set yourself up to be able to continue to be able to afford in the longer term. That's really, I think, a secret to sustainability, and that's if you can get to that point. It takes courage to make that decision, right?
Yeah, I think so.
But if you can get to that point, that's a secret for success, I think.
I think so, yeah. That's a great point, because that's that kind of incremental innovation and at the same time doing transformational, but you need the money to do that. Any other thoughts about that? Okay, that's good. Sorry, Dean, I'll find this. Apologies. Provocative question for Dean. Apologies to you from whoever gave you this question.
Do I get a mulligan?
Yeah, you get a mulligan. Yeah, we all get a mulligan. How's that? All a mulligan for tough questions.
Yeah.
Operations deal with short-term innovation. Rio's Mine of the Future looks at the least very, very, very long-term. It seems like a lot of PR. Incremental innovation and technical development is where the money is made. So it's kind of a follow-on from what we just discussed. So the question in there is, sounds like Mine of the Future is very long-term and a lot of PR.
Whenever you invest in something that looks to be, there's a major shift in the way you do business. It takes a long time, in our industry in particular. You have to consider all of the aspects of, of safety, human-machine interaction, everything. So there's nothing, like the Rio's Mine of the Future is going to happen immediately. In terms of being a lot of PR, we have had successes with it, and we've had learning opportunities. And so we're going to continue to improve on that, just like we do with any other system that we operate. So certainly it's not about PR. I don't know any mining company that would invest that much in PR.
No, exactly. You'll be up there with a consumer products company, then, right? So it's not in our blood. And I think the point, and I think we covered the second point for the person who wrote the question, is that the money is where the money is with incremental innovation and technical development, not long-range innovation. Is there a reaction to that?
Well, I mean, it's kind of what Gwen said earlier. It's a balance of both.
Yeah.
It's not just one or the other.
Yeah.
I mean, if we didn't invest in new technologies, we'd still be, the mule team would still be running the ore cars back and forth.
Exactly. Cool. So, Red, you're not off the hook. Not as tough. This is more of a softball, actually. So how does Freeport embrace technology improvements in mining equipment with its equipment rebuild strategy? Very specific.
Well, it needs to be a value proposition that is better than what we're doing today.
Yeah.
So, we're not going to do technology for technology's sake. We're going to do it to make money.
Okay, that makes a point. I think this is a great question, by the way, this one right here. Whoever wrote this, actually all the questions are great. This one's particularly good because it does beg the question. It was noted that mining companies tend to be fast followers relative to introducing innovation. So if that's the case, who's going to be the leader?
I mean, a lot of times we look outside of our industry.
Okay. Yep.
That's what we do. Right, wrong, or indifferent. That's what we do often.
Okay.
And I actually think there's probably more opportunity to even do that.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Other thoughts on that? Because I think this is an important thread, by the way, is how much from adjacent industries like oil and gas and even totally other different industries should we be looking to embrace and adapt to apply to mining? So,
the concept of fast following, I can pick one example that I would say maybe flies in the face of that. And for example, the autonomous haulage systems that are in place at more than one site around the world from more than one supplier around the world, and yet, who would you think of who might be out in the front of that? Google? Anybody hear of the Google car? And now Apple's going to have a car. But they don't have something that's actually been deployed and in production in the industry yet. So yeah, we're going to look to the Googles and the Apples and some of those kinds of technology leaders, but it's not to say that we're always going to be late to the party either.
Yeah, I think Mark Cudafane's provocation to the industry too is that not only will we find the inspiration in technologies in other industries, but if the mining industry doesn't innovate itself, you will see those other companies move into mining because they'll go, this is just an opportunity too good, particularly big industrial companies, because they'll go, we're not getting the supplies we need at the price we need, and these guys aren't innovating, they're making a meal of it, if you like, and we see an opportunity, so one never knows. So I always say, go on, Red.
I have to take exception to fast follower. I'm not sure where that label comes from. We're hard workers and improve incrementally. But one of the examples I gave this morning was the high pressure grinding roll circuit at Morenci. That's a $2 billion investment in that configuration of plant.
Yeah.
And we are now going to be able to build a big concentrator at El Abra, Baghdad, Sierrita, Morenci, employing that technology that would have a much smaller footprint, so it will be less capital intensive to build.
Yeah.
It will also be much more energy efficient when it's running.
Yeah.
So I don't, that doesn't sound like fast following to me.
Yeah, and Anglo Gold Ashanti's got a good example. I can't remember the name they gave the drill that they had tunneling companies work with them on. They can just follow the gold seam now, so there's no blasting of the rock face. I mean, this drill just goes, and they've got it in one mine in South Africa, one of their ultra deep mines. It just follows the gold seam and just takes the gold out. So, and that came from the tunneling industry. So it's a good example of that.
Yeah, just one point. It was
Barry.
very interesting for me to hear. You talked about having a couple of plants a mile apart and not sharing best practice. I think that's something that's a problem for our particular industry. And before we can be labelled fast followers or not innovators, it would be good to get our own best practice and in-house technology and best practices shared throughout the industry. And we're for some reason, very weak at that.
Yeah, I think that's an area definitely that can be worked on. This is very specific, I guess, to the US, but actually could be brought into other countries too. Are there significant research opportunities in the industry, and how will they be funded given the lack of federal funding? US BM eliminated 20 years ago. And I know Australian government's lessening its investment with the collaborative research centres as well, collapsing those. And other countries are, they're facing their fiscal constraints. So how do we do that early stage research? Do they exist? Any thoughts?
Just by way of example, I think you mentioned the Australian government. So what we do in our research activities is we participate in research that might not be targeted specifically at mining, but is government funded. So a lot of the autonomy research work that we've done over the years was as part of DARPA grants and challenges. And so it might have been focused on a car or a defense sort of a vehicle, but we were able to develop some of the base capabilities that we then can apply in the mining industry. And I think it's a question of looking for all those different kinds of opportunities out there. And it doesn't only have to come from the U.S. government investment. So we participate in the UK in energy collaboration with the UK government, some other companies, where we're developing some of the hybrid technologies, for example. So we can find ways to fund the research, even though it isn't necessarily earmarked for mining.
So it needs to be you need to be out there proactively and scouting that. I mean, Dean, you guys have a collaborative research with the University of New South Wales, I think.
Yeah, that was what I was make a point about, is that another avenue is partnering with universities, helping fund research at the university level. You get a couple benefits out of that. One is oftentimes it's less expensive. And two, you're helping to develop new people to come into the industry as well.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Brian, I'll pose this question to you, but I'd like everybody to pitch in on this one. How do you change the public perception of mining? That's based on the assumption, and I think it's pretty well regarded that the public perception of mining is not great.
Yep.
So thoughts?
Yeah, so it continues to be a real big challenge, especially for us here in the United States. Having been born and raised in a mining community, I never knew anything any different.
Yeah.
That's what you did to make a good living, and you were proud of your heritage and proud of what you did. I think that that's one of the things that Peabody has done with our Advanced Energy for Life campaign, is to try to get out and show people the benefits of coal mining. And that's probably the sector that might be under as much scrutiny as any is in coal, but there are some great benefits. I think if you look at the slide with the emission reductions that we've achieved over the last 30 years, but yet we don't seem to get any credit for that. Yeah. And we're very involved with a lot of Japanese utilities. With a technology-driven path. We've got a green gen project that we're involved in China, and it's really to just continue to share that, because a lot of these countries that are developing, they're like Gwen said, they're coming at lightning speed. Yeah. And we want to make sure that this message is displayed around the world. We have the benefit of technology. You can get your message out there, and the number of hits and inquiries we get on this Advanced Energy for Life campaign is really huge. So, I would ask everybody to look into that. I think we're doing, what we can, but it is a challenge for us.
It's a challenge. Others, any other comments on this? I mean, it's a big area. I think one of the frustrations, I think, for a lot of mining leaders is that when you have an industry that has a low trust level with society, anything the industry says is treated with a grain of salt. And so you could be doing all these great things, but when you say it, people go, it's whitewashing, it's not true. So it's got low level of credibility, which is extremely frustrating, right? So how do you get other people talking for you, I guess, on your behalf? So does anybody else feel that? Because this feeds into your license to operate, I think, a lot of the time.
Well, again, where that makes the difference is where you work.
Yeah, I agree.
And I would tell you that we are supported, and there are people that are concerned about what we're doing, of course, but we work with them constantly. We're very open with our information. We bring people to the mine, show them what we're doing. One quick example, we built a tailing dam that's going to be the largest tailing dam in the world at Cerro Verde in Peru. And as part of that permitting, we made it possible for members of the community and decision makers to go witness other tailing dams of the same type elsewhere and learn about here's how we manage them, here's what we do, because it was new and strange to them, not something that had existed before. So we go to those kinds of links locally, and a lot of the negative press against mining comes from segments of people that have other agendas.
Yeah.
And what we find is the more support we have in the local communities, when those interlopers come in to make a mess of all of that, the local people say, we'd really rather not have you messing with that.
That's great. Yeah.
So that's.
Yeah, I mean, that's good. I mean, some good examples there. And I think, mining's not the only industry that has these problems. I mean, pharmaceutical industries has very similar problems. Oil and gas industry, especially with fracking. And I was at Google 2 weeks ago, and so, I mean, Google's very dismayed. I mean, their Google brand is in tatters right now. I mean, they follow their brand very closely. It's in the toilet by their own admission because of, transparency, NSA, tax in Europe. And they said, initially their reaction was, this is a PR marketing problem, we've got to market our way out of this. But they've settled back and said, the only way we can get out of this is to live and operate true to our values and work at that harder and harder and harder until people realize, and to bring the brand up. That's all you can do.
Yes.
So I thought that was insight. Okay. The questions are coming through thick and fast. I was told that the audience don't usually give a lot of questions, so this must be a tribute to this great panel, because they're just flying at us. Actually, I think this is a good one. I mean, this is trying to be a futurist. I always say it's being fun being a futurist, because you can predict something in 20 years, and it's generally, they're wrong most of the time. So we've all discussed what the mine of the future will be, but can anyone talk about what will that mine look like? Does anybody have a vision in their head? This mine of the future could be 10, 20, 30 years. What a mine of the future should actually look like.
Well, I think one small aspect to that is as we continue down this journey of autonomous equipment, and I know that's going to continue into the future, and then we start to actually design equipment to be designed to be autonomous equipment, because we still design our equipment around an operator, even though we don't plan to put an operator in there.
Yep.
And so as soon as we start to make that shift, I know it's a kind of a small point, but that's what I would expect to see differently.
Okay, cool. Others? Any?
In aggregates, I think the mine of the future is just going to be a lot larger for us. And once again, logistics is key. So anywhere we can be close to waterborne transport, having these small sites, you talk about the environmental health and safety issues. You have the same problems on a 10 million tonne site that you do on a 200,000 tonne site. So just from an operating perspective, I think that the industry will move to much larger sites.
Okay. I mean, do you see, in your mind's eye, do you see a mine where there's actually no trucks, no shovels? And like Vale's got one of their biggest iron ore mines, which is 100% conveyor, but I'd say get rid of the conveyors. And maybe we go 100% in situ. I mean, or is this all fantasy?
I think as long as, you need to be, chasing where the ore is actually located, you're going to have need for some sort of flexible kind of equipment and structure. So, in-pit crushing and conveyors can serve a purpose in probably some applications, but unless it's all very concentrated in one place, you're going to still need to be moving around. Now, and while in your case the mines will be larger, I think they can also be more compact, because if you don't need to worry about operators and their safety intermingling with the equipment all the time, we can make things more efficiently designed and compact, for example. I think there will be drones flying all over, and the mine of the future will look more like the control room picture that you showed us. Or maybe even people don't have to be sitting all together in the same room. Maybe, many mine workers are working from their homes anywhere in the world.
It's powerful. I think it's a powerful notion. Any other thoughts, Red?
Steeper pit walls.
Steeper pit walls, okay.
Yeah, they will.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Close.
Okay. So in your opinion, I guess the panel's opinion, has the mining industry fully adjusted for a new normal since the peak of the China-led super cycle? So are we at a new normal, I guess? That's the first question. And are we adjusting fast enough as an industry?
Well, I think the answer is no. Especially in our industry, we haven't adjusted nearly fast enough.
Okay.
I guess the thing of it is there's still a growing demand for both the global seaborne thermal coal, for metallurgical coal, for iron ore. So there's still demand. I'll bet it's being outpaced by all the excess supply that's been built. So has the industry adjusted? No, our industry has not, and that's one of the reasons why you see the prices where they are. I think that there's especially in Australia, I think a lot of people hear of these take or pays, so there were commitments that were made out there, and you see a lot of people running operations that shouldn't be performing right now, but it's the best alternative versus just idling them. So they're huge capital investments, I think, as everybody knows. And once you get the thing going, it's hard to slow it down.
That's pretty cool. Red?
We're very pleased with our position right now. We've moved our operations down the cost curve. We're much more efficient than we were 10 years ago. We're growing rapidly into demand that is not going to be filled, and we're delighted.
Excellent. Big smile. Some people's trash is other people's treasure, right?
Well,
so it's not always.
And it's
too bad.
You operate through all aspects of the cycle. From the downturn to the peak. You work all the way through that.
Okay, Dean.
If I look at it from a Rio Tinto perspective, I think we've done very well positioning ourselves. But also, I've lived through too many cycles to say this is a new normal. It's just where we are. And it'll be something different 10 years from now. I don't know what that is, but it comes back to good operating discipline to make sure you're operating your company well to be able to maximize value during the cycles.
And have courage to invest both short, the transformative. No, I agree. Barry, question for you. Find it. Oh, vanished. Oh, there it is. So I think it's a good one too. So with the number of active mines that the aggregate industry has to manage being several magnitudes greater than other mining industries, and plus its urban proximity, how do you decide the engineering structure to manage these properties? And what's that look like?
Truthfully, not well enough.
Okay.
It's one of the competencies that we need to grow as an industry. As I said, the skill set in aggregates needs to change as we move from sand and gravel to hard rock, and also to larger mines. Once again, it's a real challenge for us to get the people. Any mining engineers out there that like to move to Scandinavia, perhaps you could fill out a card and send it up. But it's a real issue for us, and we realise that it's a problem. And as technology increases, the skill set on some side drops, the requirements, and on other sides increases. So, we recognise it as a problem, and we're trying to address it.
Okay. Others? on engineering? Actually, this is a follow-on about engineers and universities. So what's the role of, and I think we touched on this a little bit with the University of New South Wales collaboration. What's the role of universities play in open innovation? And how are the mining companies themselves working directly to promote and develop university students to successfully fill the roles of the future? And I think hidden in that is also how are you helping reshape the curricula, both undergrad and postgrad courses, to kind of be more attractive and more fulfilling to the people. So,
well, we find today's students very well prepared. We're delighted with all the engineering candidates that are coming our way. Intern programs, summer job programs are huge for us. We're doing almost 300 interns a summer at our operations. So we work closely with the schools to have those relationships and fun things that we think make sense for both of us. But again, it's all about attracting the students to Freeport McMoRan, and we think they're well prepared, and we're enjoying working with them.
Okay, cool. Dean, yeah?
So I think similar to what Red's experiencing, we're seeing some really quality candidates come out of North America. But as I look to the mine of the future, there's going to be fewer and fewer people in North America. Just look at it statistically speaking. China and India are producing a lot of very talented people, or at least people with a lot of potential. One of the things we're recognizing, though, is that not in all cases do they have the university background that we're looking for.
Sure.
So it's somewhat difficult to try to change the university system in China.
Yeah.
So what we've had to do to augment that is, if we get somebody in, who graduated from Chinese university, what can we do to help them close that gap? And that's where I think we see probably most of our effort going into.
Okay. Are you working with universities to do that here in the US or other Western countries?
To some extent, yes, but it's almost more on an individual basis, seeing where the student came from, what they do know, doing a bit of a gap assessment, and then designing a program for the individual to help close that gap.
And that's done all within the company.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gwen, you talked about some of your university collaboration. Are you?
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point. I think there's more opportunity than we currently are taking advantage of to help, if you will, be the matchmaker between some of the foreign universities and U.S. universities. So some of the universities we work with in the U.S. are very interested in attracting students from China, India, other places, and are very open to forming relationships with universities in those regions, whereby you can then begin to impact the curriculum or arrange for 2 years in one place and 2 years in another, where they can get access maybe to some of the coursework that the indigenous universities might not be able to provide just yet.
Okay, yeah.
So that's one opportunity, I think.
Okay, cool. Let's got time for a couple more questions. I think this is a good question, actually, this one, directed at you, Dean, but I think it's, again, for everyone. And I don't think it's just data transparency. So increased transparency may be good for the big companies, but what does it mean for smaller companies without such huge budgets? I think it goes universally for the mining industry, and Barry, you touched on this about transfer of capability and best practice. But whilst the 4, 5, 6 big companies can have the budgets to invest in some of this big innovation, how does that get out to the smaller companies? How can they participate? How do suppliers make it affordable if it's in a more closed community, or there's lots of permutations in this?
Well, actually, the technology that's involved in most cases is not very expensive.
Okay.
Some people are using a relatively new term called the Internet of Things.
Yes.
And there's more things connected to the Internet than there are people.
Yeah.
Whether it's vending machines or trash bins, and it's just getting less and less expensive to do that. So I don't see it so much as that it's going to be an option for anybody. Yeah. I see going forward it's just going to be a simple requirement, and I don't think the cost is going to be prohibitive either.
I tend to agree. Other thoughts?
Yeah, one of the characteristics of the kind of exponential trends that we hear about in big data and analytics is democratization, and truly it is lowering barriers to entry that we may have enjoyed in our industry in the past. I think it will change the competitive landscape in enabling smaller companies to have access to solutions that are just as powerful as large companies can have.
I think the other side of that too is the innovation ability of smaller companies to innovate, not just mining companies, but suppliers. Because there's statistics go around. If it took you 5 years and $100 million to build a technology company, a software company from scratch 10 years ago, today it can take you 12 months and $5 million to do the same thing. So the equation's changed. So that changes the disruptive nature of technology development. But I think it means you can adopt technology at a far cheaper, quicker rate as well.
And no matter what size your company, you need to invest in the things that's going to make you thrive and be sustainable.
Yeah,
and
you have to know your business.
So it's something you're going to have to do.
Exactly. What role will simulation play in exploring innovations to de-risk things before they're actually implemented? And also this gets down to minimal viable product. How do you do things, how do you manage the rate of failure and the cost of failure, and before you put things into production? So, and what role does simulation have in that? So is anybody using simulation in a big way?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
Pilot plants, simulation.
Yeah, okay. Just on the engineering side, some modeling plants. And, okay.
That, this roll crusher that I've been referring to, we ran a small pilot plant on that for a year.
Okay, great. Gwen, are you guys using?
Everywhere from, of course, in the course of development of the components and the product itself, simulation plays a huge role that allows us to much more accurately make sure that we're meeting all the requirements, but it extends all the way and up to job site optimization by simulating all the material movement and activity on the site, what are the optimum routes, and so on.
Okay, cool. Last question, then we'll have to close it down, is actually an analog to fracking. Okay, so for everybody, I mean, fracking is really three technologies, right? Fracking, which has been around for a long time, horizontal drilling, which has gone exponentially crazy, and the innovations then. Thirdly, advanced software, particularly with the cost of storage. And I mean, those three things were combined together by George Mitchell in Texas, and nobody in the oil and gas industry thought it was ever possible, discounted it. And 5 years ago, the US was a declining oil producer, and we were seen as going to be a non-event. This year, the US will be the largest oil producer in the world, surpassing Saudi Arabia, all on the back of fracking, all in probably 5-6 years. And it's totally dislocated supply, dislocated price. And it's micro. It's 6 million to 10 million to put a pad down versus billions for a platform. I think the analogies when I look to mining are huge. So do we? And everybody in oil said this could never happen, right? So totally discounted. So is there something in there for mining? Either what they've done, can we look at it and go, is there something to be borrowed, or do we think that's oil and gas, nothing to do with mining? That'll never happen. Is there something out there that could really dislocate the supply and therefore the whole basis of the industry? I mean, you mentioned Schlumberger, or you were doing some stuff with oil and gas.
That example is directional drilling to get a large hole underneath these excavations to dewater and make the ground, have a higher coefficient of friction to stand. So that's not a recovery thing per se metallurgically, but you'll be able to mine less rock and extract.
Are you looking at other areas, Red, from oil and gas industry to potentially leverage?
Well, there are some downhole assaying and other techniques that we've looked at, but that's the big one.
Okay, Dean, you guys?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we looked at is, we generate a lot of data, and we talked about big data, and for many people it's easier to understand that data if it's presented visually, three-dimensionally. So we have examples where we've borrowing from the oil and gas industry, using large display 3D imagery, so we can better understand what the data is, better locate drill holes for exploration. Okay. So we've done that, but kind of going back a little bit to your question, I think if you were to ask that same question to the oil industry in a panel, they would have said, yeah, there's going to be something, but we don't know what it is.
We don't know what it is.
Yeah, if we knew, we'd be doing it.
Exactly. I was asking you to be a futurist there, terribly so. Cool. I just always give panels a soapbox moment. Is there anything that you really want to say to this audience about mine in the future that you think is a pearl of wisdom? Don't have to, so it's just always call it a soapbox moment. So, no.
One thing, we didn't quite touch on this, but I think we're going to see how mines are valued change.
Okay.
The way that we've all been valuing mines for years now is, basically on net present value type analysis, which is a very, very common understanding in a Western culture. Well, there's a lot of cultures that don't get that.
Yep.
And in fact, to them, it's value destroying.
Yeah.
And I think that as we go forward, we're not always going to design mines around net present value.
Yeah.
There will be something else that we look at that tells us what really is the true value of that operation.
Okay. Do you think the financial communities will drive that, or do you think the forces will come?
No, actually, I think the financial community is probably going to resist it.
Okay, interesting. Okay, well,
because it's just so comfortable.
Yeah.
It's very easy. It's a measure we can say this is how much you're worth.
okay. That could change the whole economies of a mine, right? Interesting. Any other people? No, that's good. So hopefully, everyone, I know it's getting close to 11, which we have to finish. We've covered a lot of territory, from technology to communities. Some big themes that I thought it came out today was this whole aspect of transparency and open engagement with all stakeholders to build and maintain trust on a continual basis, enabled by technology, enabled by big data and other things. I think Dean, Red, Barry all talked to that point. Mine of the future is made, not found. I think very, very important. We have to be deliberate about that. Everybody talked about this whole notion of sustainable mining in one way or another. Less waste, less energy, more selective. We didn't touch on a lot is what's the responsibility of mining for recycling, the end products that it produces. Where's that going? And, Brian and Gwen, you've really touched on those areas. I mean, the whole area of data analytics, I think I'm the 8th time that I've said this, and big data across not only the operational aspects to make a network mine, network value chain, huge. Gwen made a prediction, so we'll stick to this. Fully autonomous mine will happen by 2025, so we'll come back here. Was it 2025? Yeah, 10 years from now, so 2025. And I think the key thing for me was about better collaboration, more openness. Open innovation is a very common term and not well understood, I think, by a lot of people. But I think this collaboration within the industry, amongst mining companies, amongst suppliers, but also reaching out beyond this industry. Because I think there's a lot of technologies that have advanced so fast in other industries that I think the mining industry can really, as I say, put a straw into the R&D efforts and innovation efforts of those other industries and adapt those. So, guys, thank you very much for a great panel. Please join me in thanking them for their time today. Thanks, guys. Excellent. That was good. Red.
Thank you. Great job.
Thank you. Enjoyed it. That was a good discussion. Brian, awesome. Thank you. I enjoyed it. Barry. Cheers, mate. That was good. Gwen.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was fun.
Yeah,
that was good. Yeah, we covered a lot of
the program yet. We just have a couple of recognitions left. If you would just keep your seat or stay where you are for just a moment. I wanted to call Dwayne Richards, the chairman of the Colorado Mining Association, up to the stage, along with Bob Comer. Bob is the chairman of the 117th National Western Mining Conference. We just have a brief recognition here. Bob is a partner with Norton Rose Fulbright Law Firm here in Denver. He has been engaged in mining issues for as long as I can remember. Certainly, we've known each other for 25 years. Bob, on behalf of the Colorado Mining Association, we wish to thank you for your efforts and for your work as chairman of this year's conference. And in recognition of that, wish to present you with this praise and statuette for a job well done.
I will be very brief. Just a quick note. I am honored to represent Norton Rose Fulbright as the Colorado Mining Association chair of the 117th National Western Mining Conference in conjunction with the SME annual meeting. Navigating the global waters, our theme, from prices to regulatory overreach to technological innovation, is as challenging as ever, and the regulators never have a downturn. So our vigilance is critical. Our industry, regardless of your role, must be even more creative and resourceful, and that is what we do as miners. I urge you to attend some of the Colorado Mining Association programs. Colorado is often an early indicator of many national issues and international issues, and come to see what you need to plan for. On behalf of Norton Rose Fulbright, I thank you for your participation, and I want to thank CMA and SME for all they do in their roles to keeping our industry vibrant. Thank you very much.
And now I would like to call Dave Carnegie to the stage for the second presentation.
Thank you, Stuart. This is our 5th time, as you mentioned earlier today, in our joint conference, and I'm pleased to say that we have over 900 exhibitors upstairs for you to visit. There'll be lunch today while you're visiting those exhibitors. But just as importantly, I want to recognize Vlad Kestovich, because Vlad is our program chairman from SME, and he coordinated about 100 technical sessions for everybody's consumption over the next 3 days, and about 650 presentations to go in all those 100+ sessions. So, Vlad, thank you very much for everything that you've done to make this a terrific conference. All right, folks, this ends our session this morning, and please enjoy the exhibits, lunch, and technical sessions start at 2 o'clock today.